Hello everyone, it's Greg from Edinburgh Renaissance Fencing Academy here for another online fencing tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about recovering in de Grassi's late 16th century rapier system. The term recovering in the wider fencing world of course means moving back to a defensive stance after you've completed an attack. De Grassi doesn't use this term in his book in 1570, and in fact he never describes this action at all in the entire work, which is a little bit strange on the one hand, but on the other it's for a simple and logical reason. He gives in a lot of detail his principles of how to defend yourself in the system in any situation. So if you're at the end of an attack, you apply essentially the same defensive principles that you apply if you're just waiting on guard. However, we do need to adapt this a little bit to take account of the posture that we find ourselves in at the end of a thrust or the end of a cut. So in today's tutorial, we're going to be looking at how to move into a defensive stance from a stoccata, so from the extension of the standard thrust in his system. First of all, let's just talk about what that posture is as a quick reminder. I'll put my sword down for now so I can show you this in this direction. So de Grassi's thrust is launched with a modestly sized step supporting the action of the sword hand. So we extend the sword hand, push forwards, take a step, and we end up in a posture like this. So chest expanded, the body's profiled, and we're nice and balanced. And there should be a more or less straight flank here. So this is the position that we're going to be in when we want to recover. So when you're practicing this at home, get yourself into this stance and then work through some of the exercises that I'm about to demonstrate. So, another of de Grassi's principles that we need to follow when we're recovering is that we should try to cover ourselves at all times from our opponent's attack or opponent's threat. Basically, that means we need to put our blade between our body and our opponent's weapon. So if I'm in my stoccata position, something like this, profiled, extended stance, and the sword out here, I need to somehow move the blade so that it's protecting wherever my opponent's attacking. If my opponent's threatening over here, then I'm going to move away from my opponent and I'm going to move my sword to cover that line. Okay, so far so good. We could of course use a different step using the back leg instead of the front leg. So these are two variations of an outside parry executed as a recovery from the extended stance. Now, one of the reasons I want to focus on this in this tutorial video is because many people do this wrong. They move the weapon to try and parry, and then they move the foot to increase the distance, and they don't engage their body in the movement. This is a big mistake. In order to maximize the deflective power of the parry and also keep the weapon under control, which remember, late 16th century weapons, relatively big and heavy, we need to engage the core muscles. So what I'm going to do from this extended position is I'm going to think with my vita, with my waist, and also with the lead shoulder and the hips, and I'm going to contract all of these back like so in order to pull the blade into the defensive position and deflect the opponent's attack as it comes in. And as I'm making this torso posture with a gentle contraction of the sword, I'm going to pull the foot back to support the parry, or move the back leg to one side, but supporting the same torso posture. On the inside stance, from the inside threat, we do something similar, just in the mirror opposite position. So I need to parry an attack here, and I'm going to make this movement. And then I'm going to support it with the movement of the front foot. or with a circular step with the back foot. Okay, so the parries can be supported by, as we've seen, a movement of the front foot or the back foot. Let's take a step back and think about Degrassi's basic principles of defence. If you're stood in guard, you should try to move a little bit to the side when you make these parries. So for the basic parries, we make the slope step or we make the circular step. So these are the ideal steps to make in guard, but also the ideal steps to make when you're extended at the attack and trying to recover. However, if it's necessary to save yourself, you can pull back the front foot, as he says in his treatise, and this is quite often the case when you're at full extension. You should practice both variations and also try to practice defending different heights of attack. So the attacks can come from the inside line or from the outside line, but they can also come high or low, not only at a kind of mid-level. So once you've got the core mechanics here, so from your extended stance, torso engaged to move the sword, add in the footwork to either side, the front foot, then with the back foot. So you're just working from the extended stoccata stance, and then start throwing in some variable footwork with the front foot sometimes with the back foot, front foot, back foot, and then finally start to add in some of the high and low lines. Front foot, outside line, low line. Front foot, inside line, high line. Or you can use a hanging guard, so defending against the inside line high with the front foot. Okay, but for all of these parries, this hip and shoulder rotation, being driven by the vita, being driven by the waist, is the key mechanic, combined with contraction of the sword arm and the chest. So that's a very brief overview of a complex topic, but I really do recommend you practice this as much as you can. It's one of the most important things to know in the system. And that's for a simple reason. When you're at this extension at the end of an attack, if the attack has not succeeded, you are at your most vulnerable in this posture. Your opponent will have somehow defeated your attack, and your defense is committed out here. Very, very dangerous. Okay, the opponent will be looking to get into this space to take you out with a close range attack. So you must be able to contract back and cover yourself with your blade as soon as possible. Okay, so once you have got comfortable working from the extension of the stoccata, pulling back into this, you can, of course, start from an on-guard position, launch an attack, and then make a recovery. So it's a more advanced version of the drill. Attack, recover, parry. Attack, recover, parry. Attack, recover, parry. Okay, so that's it. Two versions of the drill. The basic one, work from the attacking stance. The more advanced one, do the attack and then recover. But defense is always more important than offense. We should remember that when we're approaching fencing as a martial art. The defense keeps you alive. Right, that's it for today. Hope that's useful for you. I'll be back soon with another tutorial.